Welcome to today's explainer. Let's jump right in. I want you to picture your career journey as a rushing river. When you first start out, you're navigating this relatively calm, narrow little stream. But as you progress, that river gets wider, the current gets way faster, and the navigation gets intensely complex. The tools that kept you afloat in the shallows simply aren't going to work in the rapids. To survive and actually thrive in that high-stakes environment, your leadership style needs a fundamental shift. It literally needs to become like water. So let's explore how marrying ancient Daoist philosophy with modern executive coaching makes that possible. To help map this out, we're going to quickly cover 4 things today. First, the leadership river. 2, the way of water. 3, shifting time, skills, and values. And finally, the art of non-action. All right, let's dive into part 1, the leadership river. So, picture that narrow stream again. Early in your career, you're basically paddling your own boat. Your success is entirely on you, your individual effort, your intellect, the sheer number of hours you put in. But then you move upstream, and the river widens. Management thinker Ram Charan really hit the nail on the head here. He said, first-time managers are responsible for getting work done through others rather than on their own. This is a famously brutal transition for high performers. The exact instincts that made you successful, doing everything yourself, controlling every tiny variable, they actually become your biggest liabilities. The second you are put in charge of a team, you just can't rely solely on your own output anymore. You have to unlearn that deeply ingrained instinct that your own 2 hands are enough to paddle the boat. So, how do we survive this widening corporate river? Well, we can actually draw on a pretty profound concept from ancient China, the Tao. Basically, the Tao is this metaphysical first principle. It's the natural way of the universe. Lao Tzu, who wrote the foundational text of Taoism, taught that surviving the rapids of life, and yeah, the corporate river too, isn't about fighting the current. It's definitely not about exhausting yourself trying to force your will on the water or tightly controlling every outcome. Honestly, that approach just leads straight to burnout. Instead, it's about understanding and aligning ourselves with the natural flow of change. It's a total pivot in mindset from forcing outcomes to facilitating them. You realize that true power comes from working with your environment, not battling against it. Which brings us to part 2, the way of water. Lao Tzu actually used water a lot as a metaphor for the ultimate leadership style, and the Daoist model of the Wateristic personality brilliantly illustrates this. It shows how living in harmony with others requires us to adopt specific traits that mimic the actual properties of water itself. It's this amazing framework that takes super abstract philosophical concepts and turns them into a highly practical behavioral toolkit for leaders dealing with crazy, ever-changing environments today. Let's break down these 5 traits, often called the Daoist Big 5, and see what they actually look like in the office. First up, water is altruistic. It nourishes everything without asking for a single thing in return, kind of like a leader who invests deeply in their team's growth. Second, it's modest. Water naturally flows down to the lowest places. In leadership, that means you're not competing with your team for credit or the spotlight. Third, it's flexible. Water takes the exact shape of whatever container you pour it into, just like an adaptable leader shifts their style based on the unique needs of a crisis. Fourth, it's transparent, representing the open, honest communication that builds massive trust. And finally, water is gentle, but incredibly persistent. This is the coolest paradox. There's literally nothing softer or more yielding than water, yet give it enough time, and it will carve a canyon right through solid rock. Yielding doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're adaptable and ultimately incredibly powerful. Moving right along to part 3, shifting time, skills, and values. Now, the real trick is applying these water-like traits as we transition through the different stages of the leadership river. Modern executive coaching uses a rule of 3 that you constantly need to evaluate: how you allocate your time, what skills you prioritize, and what core values drive your decisions. These are all totally interconnected. As your boat gets bigger, whether you're leading 4 people or 40, you have to transparently and flexibly adapt all 3 of these pillars. What got you to your current spot on the river is not going to get you around the next bend. Failing to upgrade even one of these pillars as you grow will for sure capsize the boat. You can't just use individual contributor values while trying to use managerial skills. The whole shebang has to shift together. Let's look at a quick micro case study to ground this. Take Mark, a newly hired junior auto engineer. When Mark first started, he was totally overwhelmed by the job. To manage himself effectively, he had to completely shift his approach. For his time, he adopted strict time blocking to protect his focus. For his skills, he learned how to master project management software. But the most profound shift was in his values. He had to stop valuing just the sheer quantity of hours he grinded out and start valuing the quality of his output, realizing he needed to manage his energy for the long haul. Mark was learning to adapt his shape to his new container. Now, contrast Mark with John. John was this rock star sales leader who just got promoted to general manager. Suddenly, his river got way wider and faster. To survive, John really had to embody Daoist altruism and modesty. He had to make the super tough call to reallocate his time away from direct client relationships, which he loved, by the way, and put it toward big picture strategic initiatives. He had to develop entirely new financial skills, and most importantly, his values had to shift. Personal sales awards and the high of closing a deal had to take a backseat. He had to yield his own ego and start valuing his team's success over his personal wins. He was becoming the nourishing water for his team. Next up is Alex, a product manager at a major tech company. Alex transitioned from managing specific products to a functional leadership role, juggling diverse, often competing teams. Alex adapted like water by using extreme flexibility. His time shifted heavily into cross-functional planning. His skills shifted toward advanced conflict resolution. In doing so, he basically became this fluid buffer between engineering and marketing. By acting like water, Alex flowed around obstacles and huge egos instead of crashing directly into them. And his values expanded from launching individual features to prioritizing the long-term competitive advantage of the whole company. Just like water taking a new shape, Alex molded his style to perfectly fit his new environment. Which leads us to our final section, Part 4, the art of non-action. So, what does this all mean when you reach the absolute highest, widest points of the leadership river? Seriously. How do you lead a massive, complex enterprise without trying to micromanage every single drop of water in the current? Well, the answer lies in something called way. This translates to practicing active non-action, basically doing something while not doing something else. It's the core principle of non-interference. Now, I want to be super clear here. This is not about being lazy, negligent, or just checking out. Not at all. It is highly strategic non-interference. It's about understanding the whole system of your business so well that you can let events take their natural course, intentionally empowering your people to take full ownership without you hovering over their shoulders. And let me tell you, it requires immense discipline to step back when every instinct is screaming at you to jump in and take control. Lao Tzu actually captured this in one of the most brilliant and honestly surprising metaphors in all of leadership literature. He said, leading a large organization or state is like cooking a small fish. Just think about that for a second. If you're frying a tiny, delicate fish in a pan, what happens if you constantly poke it, flip it, and stir it around? Right, it totally falls apart. It turns to mush. In the exact same way, too much managerial interference, too much poking and prodding will absolutely ruin an organization. The corporate equivalents of turning that fish to mush are brutal. Widespread burnout, zero team autonomy, and massive employee turnover. You have to set the right temperature, add the right flavor, and then have the courage to just step back and let the cooking happen. Now this is a massive, counterintuitive shock to how we traditionally view success, isn't it? Traditional Western management heavily rewards the urge to do more. It celebrates aggressive assertiveness, constant intervention, and the leader playing the highly visible hero who swoops in to save the day. But Daoist leadership completely flips that exhausting narrative on its head. It champions wei wu wei, yielding, pulling back, and letting things flow naturally. It suggests that the absolute best leaders are the ones whose teams look around at the end of a huge project and say, wow, we did it all by ourselves. True leadership at scale is kind of invisible. Let's see what wei wu wei actually looks like in the modern corporate world. Take Sophia, for example. She's the CEO of a massive global logistics conglomerate. Obviously, Sophia literally cannot micromanage shipping routes and daily warehouse operations across 30 different countries. Instead, she perfectly embodies active non-action. She sets the overarching strategic direction, she meticulously builds a team of ambitious, highly competent executives, and then she intentionally steps back. She embraces a visionary mindset and lets her executives do the actual steering of the ship. She is cooking the small fish by carefully managing the broader environment and the culture while explicitly avoiding doing the granular work for them. Which brings us to a really critical question for your own career journey. As your river inevitably gets wider and faster and your responsibilities exponentially grow, how are you handling the flow? Are you exhausting yourself trying to force the current? Or are you shifting your time, skills, and values and finally learning to be like water? Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer, and I hope this helps you navigate whatever rapids come your way.